Hello, and welcome to the Pro Series Conversations from CheckBox Pro. My name is Missy, and I'm the founder of CheckBox Pro, where we help school leaders become their most efficient and effective selves by matching them with ed-focused executive assistants. Each member of our team has over 10 years of experience in the education sphere, and though we may consider ourselves pros in some areas, we can't be an expert in every area. This is why we are excited to bring folks working in the education space to offer tools, tips, and insights to make the life of a school leader even more sustainable.
Hello and Happy New Year. I want to congratulate you all for making it through 2024 and the first semester of the school year. I'm not sure how it is already 2025, but here we are. I'm doing something a bit different for this episode. If you've listened in previously, then you know that I usually chat with experts in the field of education. However, today you all just get me because I'm doing a 2024 year in review. Folks say it's important to take time to reflect. I personally am terrible at it, but thought I would try it out when thinking about this past year for CheckBox Pro and more specifically, this podcast. This will be a shorter episode, and at the end, I will leave you with 3 questions you can use during your time of reflection when/if you ever get it. Before we fully jump in, I thought I would give a very quick overview of how CheckBox Pro came to be. So here we go. I graduated from the University of Texas, Hook'em, in Austin and moved to Memphis, Tennessee to be a teacher. I taught for 1 whole year and realized teaching was not for me. But I love education and I wanted to continue to work in this space, so I took on the role of an office manager at an all-boys, single-site charter middle school during its founding year. As the school grew, my role within the organization grew too. I wore every hat: office manager, nurse, librarian, lunchroom monitor, substitute, parent liaison, enrollment coordinator, yearbook editor, athletic director, and finally the director of student affairs, where I focused on helping our students find the right high school after their time with us. During my 8 years working there, my husband became the principal, and I got a behind-the-scenes look at the work of a school leader. Guys, it's hard, and it never stops. In 2019, we decided to move back to Texas to be closer to family, and the idea of CheckBox Pro was born. I thought, well, what would it be like to create capacity in the lives of school leaders so that they can focus on what matters most? Rather than sitting behind a screen, entering data, or scheduling meetings, they could be in classrooms or networking with donors. So after 6 years of doing this work, we're still working tirelessly to take those repetitive tasks off of the plates of school leaders so they can work efficiently and effectively to push the missions of their organizations forward. But now, rather than being a party of one, I have a whole team. More on that later. All right. So now that you understand where and how CheckBox Pro came to be, you can hopefully understand why I say we are experts in some areas, but we can't be pros in every area. So this leads me into how and why this podcast came to be. When people ask me how or why, I wish I could say something about its conception being strategic or methodical or clever. But the truth is that I really just fell into it. I was doing webinars and I had the idea of co-leading a webinar with Kayla Small. As we were planning, it just didn't feel right trying to meld our 2 types of work together for a webinar format. However, I did think the work and approach she was taking with the principals she coaches was interesting. So I pivoted and just decided to interview her instead. I loved it. I much preferred the format of a one-on-one interview as opposed to teaching through a webinar. Remember how I said I taught for 1 whole year? And it wasn't for me. Teaching just totally goes against my wiring. I'm not the kind of person to captivate an audience, but I do love a good chat with a person, especially when it's all about them. So because of how fun that first episode with Kayla was, the CheckBox Pro series officially launched in March of 2024. And if you haven't listened, then you should go back to the beginning and listen. She is great. Since then, I have released 18 episodes. That feels big. Once I figured out how to do it, my team and I have comfortably released 2 episodes per month. I don't have time to highlight them all, but I will go through a handful of them and what made them meaningful to me. When I started out doing the series, I started by talking to my friends and former colleagues who are doing some really great work in education. It was a safe place to start. Some of the work they do, I understand, but may not know all of the nuances, or it is a role I've never explicitly had, so I got to do a deeper dive in understanding their role and its importance in education. However, in episode 4, I talked to Sam Brobeck, who is a friend and former colleague. He no longer works in schools, but instead he works at Educational Resource Strategies, which helps districts and states efficiently and effectively use their resources, especially in light of budgetary cuts coming out of the ESSER era. efficiently and effectively using resources I get and love. But learning about it from the larger district or state level was new for me. I truly did not know much about the funding side of things and the trickle-down impact. This was the first episode where I felt like, this is the whole point of my podcast. Like, I get to learn from the experts just like my listeners get to. So that was fun. The next episode of meaning was episode 9 with Elizabeth Simpson. And that was a fun one for me because remember that all boys school in Memphis I mentioned? Well, she was the founder and head of school. As one of my first employers for a big girl job, she was great. I learned so much under her leadership, and getting to talk to her as a peer was kind of cool. It was also interesting to have her perspective on what it is like founding a school before and after having kids. These conversations are good reminders to me for why I do this work. I want leaders to have fulfilling jobs and still feel like they have the time to be humans at home with friends and family. I want this work to be sustainable, and Elizabeth is proof that it is possible. So like I said, up until September, I'd only talked to friends or at least professional acquaintances. Then in September, I did a very brave thing, y'all, and I talked to a complete stranger. For the fellow introverts out there, you get it. I first learned about the Social Institute through a webinar they hosted for the Texas Public Charter Schools Network of Leaders. Laura Tierney is the founder and CEO of the Social Institute, and we talked about how her company is trying to help create a safe and productive relationship for kids in social media. I'm sure we can all relate and could maybe even glean some ideas for ourselves. Either way, if this topic is of interest to you, then I highly recommend you listen to episode 12. Last highlight. I never planned to do a series on the same topic, but after talking to Drew Masterson, who is lovely, in episode 13, it was clear that I needed to do just that for facilities. If you are in the charter space or nonprofit space looking for a facility, then I highly recommend you listen to episodes 13 through 18. Though each episode only scratched the surface, because I'm determined to keep my episodes as close to 45 minutes or less as possible, I really did learn a lot. I feel like I walked away from the series understanding each person's role and how they interact with one another. And wrapping up the series with the perspective of a school leader was just a no-brainer. And Paul Morrissey was the perfect guest to do just that. Not only has he worked directly with many of the facility guests I had on the show, but he has worked with them on multiple projects, everything from repurposing a space to new construction. So after the success of that series, I'm definitely keeping my eyes and ears open for another potential series. Like I said, I wish I had time to highlight all of my episodes because I've learned something from each guest I've had on the show. And if this is your first time tuning in, then welcome. But I do encourage you to go back to the beginning and binge them all. Okay, now on to just some exciting business highlights from 2024. Number 1, I added 3 amazing new team members. You will get to meet them in a future episode, I hope. Number 2, we began supporting 17 leaders at 8 organizations across 6 states. Number 3, it has been a goal of mine, and mainly my marketing person, to remove the stock photos from my website with real live photos. I finally got to do that thanks to the photography talents of Tomas Segura Photography. If you need headshots, events, or wedding photographs, then check them out. And a special thanks to Austin Achieve Public Schools who let me use their space. Appreciate you. Number 4, I presented for the first time at the Texas Public Charter Schools Conference. Again, because lecture style isn't my thing, I used a panel format instead. I had 4 amazing women's school leaders talk about how they have owned and leveraged their leadership style and strengths to further the mission of their organizations. Shout out to Letitia Andrews from Beta Academy, Pam Aubrey from Compass Rose Public Schools, Tamika Griffin from Up Excellence, and Amy Tanner from Yellowstone Schools. We had a full room, y'all, and got great feedback from the session participants because each of my panelists are passionate and effective at what they do. And lastly, number 5, guys, we created resources for school leaders, and they're good. My team works really hard to create helpful free resources for school leaders, and this year released 6 templates that we hope make the lives of leaders a little bit easier. You can access all of them on our website at checkboxpro.com/resources. Okay, last bit before we get into the reflection questions, I have some folks to thank. Thank you for 2024. First, I want to take a moment to thank Stephanie Halstead, who is my operations manager and makes so much of what we do at CheckBox Pro possible. From keeping me on track, to building templates, to onboarding new team members, to getting podcast episodes prepped for editing and distribution, she has been an invaluable team member. Thank you to Sawyer Schafo and his team for helping keep my website looking good and being the man with the plan for the CheckBox Pro content. And for editing my episodes. This really isn't his professional focus, but as a longtime friend, he helps me out. That being said, he is a rock star and a former CheckBox Pro Series guest, see episode 3, when it comes to student recruitment. His ability to partner with and really listen to school leaders allows him to create a plan that attracts students to the mission of each of the schools he works with. Check out Every Desk if you need help with your student recruitment efforts. Thank you to my team of account managers. In 2024, they provided a combined 866 hours of services per month to their leaders. That means that our team gave back 10,392 hours to school leaders to focus on what matters most, ensuring students have access to high-quality education. Nicole, Daniela, Jesse, and Aiden, thank you. Thank you for being a sounding board, encourager, and a box checker for leaders across the country. And finally, a huge shout out and thank you to every school leader and organization who has trusted me and my team to support you in your work. We love getting to play a part in the important and challenging work you do each and every day. Thank you for your time and effort to create a more equitable and educated America. Okay, so like I said, earlier in the episode, I mentioned 3 questions to use for your time of reflection. I can't take credit for these questions. I'm borrowing them from some friends who use these questions as part of their birthday celebrations. However, they are perfect for any natural times of transition. Birthday, New Year's, end of school years, anniversaries, etc. I hope you too find them helpful. So the first question is, what do you want to take with you? So for me, it is the office space that is close to my girls' school. We love their school, but it is 40 minutes from our home. In order to make the school work, we had to find a way to not drive back and forth or work from a coffee shop every day. This affordable co-working space has been a game changer that I definitely want to keep in 2025. The second question for y'all for reflection is, what do you want to leave behind? For me, it's inconsistent weekly summits. My husband and I usually try to commit to a normal rhythm of a weekly summit to ensure we're on the same page for kiddos' activities, work commitments, meals, exercise, etc. We started 2024 strong, but once summer hit, we fell out of this routine. That made the fall a bit more chaotic than I would like. So I want to leave behind this particular inconsistency in 2025. And the last question, what do you hope for? I hope to continue to see CheckBox Pro grow and support more school leaders. I truly believe that leadership sustainability makes a huge impact on teacher sustainability and the academic success of students. If we're able to help keep more effective school leaders in this work, then that would be a win for me. Again, those reflection questions are, what do you want to take with you into this next year? What is one thing or multiple things you want to leave behind? And what do you hope for? The last thing I'm going to leave you with today are 2 asks. 1, if you like this podcast, please like and subscribe. It really does help other folks find the show. 2, we release a monthly newsletters that has tips and resources for school leaders. We also do a brief recap of the podcast guests we had on the show that month. If you want to get this letter at the end of each month, then click on the link in the episode notes to subscribe. Thank you for joining me today as I took time to reflect on 2024. Cheers to you all for a wonderful 2025.
Thank you all for listening to today's Pro Series conversation. Our team is always looking for more pros to learn from in the field of education. So if you have a recommendation for a future guest, or maybe you are the pro, then send us a note at info@checkboxpro.com. And if you want to hear from more pros, then like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss an episode. And by doing so, this also helps more folks find our show. So take a moment to check that box off your list today.